Writing your character's backstory is probably the most exciting part about any tabletop role-playing game. This is when you really get to discover what your character is truly about, what their goals are, what their flaws are, what they act like, who they know, who they don't know, everything about them right before the game starts. You are in full control of, and it's extremely exciting to start putting the pen to paper and fleshing out all the important details about this character. All their epic travels, their incredible deeds, their wonderful journeys, everything you could possibly desire to know about this character is contained within that backstory. But how do you know if you have a good backstory? Sure, you might be pleased as Peach with your backstory and think it's the highest quality thing since butter on bread, but does your DM enjoy your backstory? Do the other players you're playing with enjoy your backstory? Is your backstory and your character worth the time to get to know because it's interesting to hear about? Well, let's find out. The first thing to consider before you begin to write your backstory is what level or how much experience does your character have before the setting of this game. Most games, for at least Dungeons & Dragons, will start you at roughly between level 1 to level 3, with the majority happening at level 1. Now, a common problem that happens with most character backstories is that if you are playing a fighter starting out at level 1, but you have all these epic deeds that this person has done in their backstory, so much as slewing a dragon to save a kingdom, yet when you get into your first encounter at level 1 and your first session and you are felled by a couple of goblins, it doesn't really mesh with what happened in your backstory. And that's why the first thing you should look at is adjust your backstory's experience to your player's current level. If your character is only level 1, they have the basic set of skills for their class. They're not out here killing ancient dragons and going through dungeons and disarming every single trap. They're not doing anything like that. It will happen later as your campaign progresses on and your character gets stronger. Then absolutely, those stories will happen and your character will have that power. But right now, not quite there yet. So tailor those down to where your character is further level. This second part very much depends on the type of game you're playing in and the DM you have for that game. If you have a wargamer DM and your tabletop game is very much centered around combat and battles and not a whole lot of roleplay, then this second one may not be as important to you. But if you have a DM who's very into the roleplay and a campaign with lots of twists and turns and heavy on the narrative, then this one you should absolutely pay attention to. And that is to leave things open-ended in your backstory so your DM can use them later. For example, let's say in your character's backstory you were in the town marketplace and you were handed a key by a mysterious woman in a hooded cloak. You've never seen this woman before and you've never seen her again and you don't know what this key is for, but you hold on to it nonetheless just in case. And that's all you write. Your DM now can read this and have a plan going on in their head. What can they use this key for? Who is that old woman? What is she about? And your DM can now incorporate your backstory into the campaign, and on top of that, it will make your character feel like they belong in this world, like they're important to this world. Not that your backstory and your DM's campaign are two separate things, but they belong in the same narrative. And as a player, it is very, very cool when you finally discover that, oh, that's who that old woman is, or oh, that's where the key goes into. And suddenly, your actions that you wrote down influence the world ahead. And that's super cool. And the third and final thing I would recommend for you when you're writing your backstory is to make sure if you are not certain about anything like the world or places or locations, be sure to ask your DM about some things about your world or locations. Or better yet, if you want to make some of those places up yourself, be sure to ask your DM if it is okay. For example, if you want to say you're from a small fishing village named Feren, but you don't know if there is any fishing villages in the world that your DM is planning, or if that would even make sense in the world the DM is planning, make sure you ask the DM. Your DM could respond and say, yes, absolutely, you can be from the fishing village of Feren. I'm going to put Feren here in this world, and now you've worked together to put it into the world, and now it makes sense. Or the DM could instead say, hey, fishing villages aren't really a thing when we're playing in the desert. Could you maybe alter it a little bit, keep the same name, but maybe not a fishing village? Bottom line, make sure to work with your DM so that you don't show up with a character who's a pirate sailing on the high seas all his life and is ready to continue his adventure elsewhere, and the DM goes, you're in a landlocked campaign, you've never even seen the ocean. Then that gets awkward. But now it is your turn. I want you to leave a comment down below. Which one of your backstories do you have or that you're currently writing are you the most proud of? I would love to hear about it. With all that said and done, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to tell your friends. If you didn't, you tell me. Thank you very much to my Patreons for supporting me. You are truly incredible people, and I'm very glad to have you here helping me along. Have yourself a good one, everybody. Skål!